This week saw the release of Vixen, a brand new animated series from CW that ties into the huge success of the Arrow and Flash TV shows and the much bigger CW DC universe. That show, of course, is Vixen, and it features Mcabe, a wannabe fashion designer who finds herself back in her hometown of Detroit. The first episode, which is surprisingly only 5 minutes, I honestly cannot remember anyone talking about the runtime of this show before it premiered, wastes no time getting started. As we join the show, Mari is getting herself chased down by Arrow and Flash for reasons that aren't exactly made clear right away. It does, however, prove a great place for Vixen to show off her powers, which are magically connected to the animal kingdom and a family totem that she wears around her neck. Vixen, for what it's worth, looks great. Traditional animation in a day and age when that stuff is getting harder and harder to find on television, but seems to be alive and well online and stuff like this, and also the Gods and Monsters shorts from not too long ago. Now, I would love to show you some screenshots from this episode as to better illustrate my point. Sadly, CW is famously hard on YouTubers who want to give people a better look into their shows. In fact, if reviewing Flash or Arrow is any indication, I'm not even sure if I can use the logo for Vixen without bringing down the wrath of CW on my head for some reason. In fact, in the lead up to Vixen's release, I had my trailer breakdown of the show claimed, even though it had been fine for months. Not that any of that dampens my spirits on the show or anything, in fact, quite the opposite. I really enjoyed the first episode. It had a lot to offer. Solid action, solid voice cast, and so far it looks like Vixen has all the hallmarks of a truly subversive superhero show. And that's not just because she's a woman of color, or that Mary comes from a foster home. No, I mean that she's a superhero from Detroit. Seriously, how many other superheroes from Detroit can you mention that aren't RoboCop? What I'm trying to get across is Vixen does a lot to separate itself from the rest of the pack. Get it? Pack, animal powers. God, I'm good at my job. Really, its biggest issue is in its runtime. I was just getting into it, it was just starting to get the ball rolling, and then boom, it pretty much ends right in the middle of a scene, more or less. From what I understand, these 5-minute episodes are meant to be played back to back to eventually end up for a full runtime of a show about 22 to 30 minutes, and it really does feel like they wrote the show to be a full 22 minutes and then only later decided to split it up into 5s. And so we're back with Vixen episode 2, which picks up exactly where the last episode left off. Mari accidentally taps into the power of her animal totem necklace for the first time to defeat a group of muggers using strength of an ape. Something she's not exactly fazed by, but we'll get back to that in a minute. From there, we actually do get to find out a bit more about how she ended up in foster care, that she never knew her real parents and the only tie she had to them was a necklace, which itself had links to the trickster god Anansi, and I really do hope I'm saying that right. Now, of course, this is comic book fantasy. All legends are ultimately true, and we know this one is true. For a second there in this newest episode, it looked like Mari was about to have her very own meet-cute moment with a professor that she visits when she's attempting to get more information about her powers. But in another great subversion for Vixen, they end up totally eschewing the standard CW romance plots that we have come to expect and end up totally turning the Doctor on its head, and we find out that he may not be who he's claiming to be. We also get the feeling that there may be a far greater conspiracy at work involving Mari and her powers, as there are evil forces that seek to steal the totem for themselves. Now, obviously, Vixen in the comics isn't exactly a hero overflowing with original villains, so I have to wonder if when the big bad is eventually revealed, if they're not going to be somewhat wholly original. I mean, I would love to see guys like Aku, and come to think of it, Anansi is actually a villain in the comics too, so it'd be interesting to see them turn that on its head. Although I certainly kind of doubted this early in the Vixen show history. You know, it's funny, I've often said reviewing comics week to week like I do over on the Comic Book Cast 2 channel, that it's basically tantamount to reviewing a movie at the end of every act or reviewing a TV show during every commercial break. And honestly, as I sit here reviewing these shorts for Vixen, that's kind of the same feeling I get, where it's like, what can I even say at this point? That's not to say that I'm not really enjoying the show so far. In fact, I'm quite impressed with how much content they're able to cram into 5 minutes. Or even how I was able to rejoin this story in progress and not be confused. It's just, you know, I feel like they only just got the ball rolling and then, oh, guess you're gonna have to come back next week and see what happens. Episode 3 of Vixen dropped this week, and it brought with it some very familiar faces. It seems Cisco and the Flash have been looking for metahumans outside Central City, and Mari is the very first biter, a major moment of importance for this CW superhero universe. Why, in classic Cisco fashion, he even gives Mari her Vixen nickname. both because she moves like a female fox and because, let's face it, she's also really hot. This scene is important too because it carries with it the name drop of Green Lantern's hometown of Coast City, something that could very well become very meaningful down the line, as Mark Guggenheim this week in an interview also made mention of a Green Lantern ring perhaps showing up in Arrow Season 4. Honestly, you know what, if I had it my way, I would rather see Green Lantern get the animated show treatment like this one over appearing in live action, if only for the visual freedom that animation can offer. But back to Mari and Vixen. This short also saw her coming out to her foster dad about her powers. Pretty par for the course for CW. I mean, who wants to deal with the hassle of having to keep a secret identity these days, am I right? Apparently nobody. I think my favorite part of this episode had to be when Vixen was attempting to call up the powers of a bird so that she could fly, only to back off at the last second out of fear. Keep in mind, in the CW universe, there's like maybe 2 flyers, and at least one of them does it through use of a machine. It's kind of interesting that flight is still held up as like this sacred thing, this amazing thing, this, well, for the lack of a better word, Superman level thing. The episode ends with the Flash and Arrow showing up at Mary's doorstep to bring her in, everything coming full circle now from the very first episode short. Episode 3 may very well have been my favorite so far. Cisco delivered some much needed laughs, there was some killer name dropping going on. Mari and her foster dad Chuck proved to offer up a whole different type of chemistry that we have yet to see in these CW shows, and I really enjoy it. Vixen returned this week for an all new episode, and when I say all new, I of course mean mostly new episode. Yeah, for a show that deals itself out to us in 5-minute chunks every week, they sure had no problem taking up precious minutes by giving us what is basically the exact same action scene from the first episode all over again. Cool though it may have been the first time around. So, what's new about Vixen this week, you might be asking? Well, Flash and Arrow find out what we as the audience have known from day one, and that is Mari didn't get her powers from the Central City explosion, but instead from somewhere else. I gotta say, this short got the biggest laugh out of me when Vixen throws Arrow's catchphrase of "You failed this city" back in his face. It shows a level of playfulness and self-awareness that I really look for and love in my entertainment. Mari also finally took flight this episode, as well as showing off a bunch of new powers we've yet to see. Heck, with speed, strength, flight, and even a little bit of camouflage thrown in there, she may be closer to Superman than just about anyone else in the CW universe to date. Once she learns to master her powers, of course, Vixen is still pretty raw and unrefined, but one day, who knows? To learn more about herself, Mari returns to the professor from a couple shorts back, only to be ambushed by our villain of the piece, whose name is still not yet been revealed. Vixen episode 4 was alright, not nearly as good as the shorts that had preceded it. Like I said, on top of everything else, it kind of recycles, which isn't great, so I feel like I'm working with an even shorter short than usual for this review. If nothing else, I walk away feeling that Grant Gustin may very well have a great second career in voice acting should he want it. Hopefully next week we learn a little bit more about the evil forces that have been dogging Vixen all throughout this. Vixen returned this week with an all-new episode, and it found Mari Mcabe under attack by the mysterious lady villain who's been dogging her since the first episode. Granted, 5 episodes in and this lady has yet to be given a proper name, although I think the credits called her Kuasa. I think that's how you pronounce it, but don't hold my feet to the fire if it's wrong. And no, before you ask, as far as I can tell, she's not a villain from the comics. She's a 100% new CW creation, and Mary's very own sister to boot. Yeah, it only took 5 episodes, but here we are at the also-important info dump episode, where we discover that it was her sister, not Mari, who was originally chosen to be the champion of Zambezi and the holder of the Anansi totem. But as is often the case in stories like this about Africa, a group of rebels killed Mari's family while her mother managed to escape with an infant her. It's because of this childhood trauma Kuasa harbors a major burning hatred for Mari and why she wishes to reclaim the totem, even if that means killing her sister to do so. It's not exactly the most original villainous motivation I've ever heard of, but it does work. I dig the idea of Mari finally finding out about her family, only for it to be seconds later that same family tries to kill her. It certainly keeps with the much bigger theme I've begun to notice in these CW shows about picking your loved ones and building a surrogate family from the ashes of tragedy. I hope that before all is said and done, Mari will be able to reconcile with her foster dad. And yeah, that's basically the long and short of it. Evil lady wants Mari dead. Mari Mari tries to run, but being in the middle of Africa, she can't exactly run very far. And so, yeah, at this point, most of the big burning questions about Vixen have been answered in this episode. So from here, I guess all we need is the big hero moment, followed by our main heroine taking up a name and a costume of her very own, and this whole superhero origin story will have come full circle. Africa, what little of it we saw in this episode looked pretty good. The voice acting continues to be really quality stuff. The grand finale of Vixen aired this week, and it found Mari Mcabe getting in touch with the animal spirits. And hey, of course, one of the animal spirits is voiced by Kevin Michael Richardson. He played the prison guard in the beginning of the show, and you don't get talent like that if you're not going to make him pull double duty, damn it. In a surprise twist, we discover that Mari never actually needed the totem. The spirits have chosen her to wield the power of a Nazi, and as such, she can just kind of tap into the powers whenever she damn well pleases. All the same, she must defeat her sister in a symbolic gesture. I mean, it wouldn't be a hero's journey if you don't overcome the villain, am I right? The final battle, while short, is also pretty darn great. Two people with totem powers facing off against each other gave me a very similar feeling to the first time we saw two speedsters clash on The Flash. Better yet, Mari won not because she was stronger or more well-trained, she won because she was smart and observant, remembering the whole poison spider thing from early on in the show. As I had hoped, Mari does indeed reconcile with her foster dad, and we get a nice little wrap-up to her arc involving her fashion designing career and its connection to her sense or lack thereof of identity. Heck, for once, I don't even need to wonder where Vixen got her cool costume from. She's a fashion designer. She made it herself, of course, and I think that's really awesome. In the end, Vixen decides to stay and defend the people of Detroit, saying that it's her village now, her responsibility. Why, she even gets the okay from Flash and Arrow to do so. Vixen overall had a strong ending. It hit all the points it needed to, while also leaving plenty of dangling threads should they want to do more with this show, and I really hope they do. Again, I don't know why they felt they needed it to be a series of 5-minute shorts instead of one big long pilot, but oh well, review the show you got, not the show you want. With good action, solid voice acting, and a well-realized hero's journey, I give Vixen an 8.5 out of 10. What does the future hold for this character? Well, I guess we'll just have to wait and see, won't we? Hey everyone, thanks so much for watching my newest video. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you'll feel like checking out some more videos I have on offer here at Cape Joel.